Let's open the discussion. I see Wolf Singer.
Strange to talk to my neighbor through the microphone. So your position is that it is a matter of implementation. If we had understood the human brain properly and we could really implement everything we know about the human brain, including these internal monitoring systems, this being would be, or this machine would be conscious in the sense as we consider ourselves as conscious. Is this what you're saying? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Shall we collect a few points and then you come back? Or would you prefer to respond right away?
Just respond yes.
Yes. Well, maybe more will be asked. Marcus Gabriel. Yes, I saw you.
Okay, got it. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, just a quick question. As you know, I think I entirely disagree with what you say about consciousness, but first I need to understand it better in order to be sure what exactly I disagree with or not. So could you say a few words about, you said correlation seems to be your view, right? But if two systems A and B or S and S star are correlated, then they're clearly not identical, right? So, and if it's not an identity theory, then this doesn't demonstrate not even the weak possibility that there could be conscious machines. All you could do is have a functionist account which demonstrates that by copying something that has the same functions as consciousness in humans, we create something that can be in many functions indistinguishable from consciousness, but this doesn't demonstrate at all that there could be machine consciousness, only that you could build something that looks relevantly similar to conscious entities like consciousness. So do you have a solution for this? Correlation doesn't do it, obviously, so I would like to know if you have a stronger concept that would do the work.
Right. No, this is a difficult point. Well, several points into one. One, I think, distinct from what you are saying is the correlation versus causation. I didn't talk about causal experiments, but they are coming as well. In fact, in the monkey paper, it's possible to stimulate the monkey brain and show that there is a causal relationship to conscious perception. This is the beginning. Most causal experiments are disruptive. They show that you can disrupt consciousness. The interesting causal experiments will be one where you can create a conscious percept, an illusion, by stimulation. It's already possible to a large extent. If you, even with a transcranial outside, in the human brain, you can stimulate some areas and create a percept of motion or a percept of light. This has the same sort of properties as I was describing from an external stimulus. So that's causation in the sense that we can show that this sort of brain activity causes a conscious state in humans. Now you were saying, well, okay, we can copy all of that and the behavior could be strictly identical and yet one is conscious, the other is not. This is the Chalmers argument. This is the idea that there are zombies. I think it's a whole discussion in philosophies which I do not like, because as a scientist, it's very difficult, essentially impossible. It has not led to any interesting science to say that there could be two identical machines, but one is a zombie, the other is conscious. This, where we have made progress is by taking seriously the reports of the subjects and to describe carefully their introspection. So for instance, this illusion that I forgot to say something about this illusion of the gray levels here. If you think of a machine looking at the world and looking at this chessboard, the machine should have exactly the same illusion as the human, I think. Because if the goal of the machine is to understand the state of the world, it should end up with the conclusion that this is a checkerboard. It should remove the shadow exactly like we remove the shadow. Once you have a machine that mimics all of these computations, and really all of them, because that's the argument of the zombie, right? The whole behavior is the same. I think there is no point of the matter to say one is conscious, the other is not. I think we have reached a stage where we have a machine that has all of the capacities, including consciousness.
Okay, I have 5 people on the list. We have 5 minutes more. Short questions, short answers. Some issues may come up after Marcus Gabriel's points. Stefano.
Thank you, Stanislas. I have a very specific question. As far as you know, is it true that the scientists gathered by the University of Singularity are launching the project of arriving at the artificial consciousness. They say that artificial intelligence is already something acquis, and so they want to move in that direction. And so if that is true, how do you account for the experiential component of human within the computational setup by John von Neumann and others? Thank you.
Well, I don't know anything about this particular research program. I'm sorry about that. I know some specific research programs that try to solve particular problems. For instance, there is, in fact, a science paper from, I think, 2 years ago, solving the so-called, how do you call them, the CAPTCHAs, you know, which used to be thought as something completely uniquely human, but now there is a machine that can solve CAPTCHAs. So I know specific programs. I would not take very seriously someone who says, I want to do consciousness. I think we have to solve the specific problems of, you know, self-knowledge and so on first. What was your second?
No, what is called the experiential component.
Oh, the experiential component. Well, okay, this is difficult. One sense in which we can explain these illusions, for instance, the visual illusion of the checkerboard, this is one sense in which you explain your experience, right? We can explain with Bayesian inference, for instance, why you perceive one square as dark and the other as light. So we explain your experience. I think that's good enough. But there are other people who think, no, experience always escapes that. There is this idea of qualia, something that is in fact very poorly defined, I think. I would like to have a definition of qualia. That seems to be much more like an intuition of the scientist.
Qualia.
Qualia, quale in the plural. People typically point to the experience of seeing a beautiful sunset. Experience of seeing, well, we all experience a beautiful sunset. Could we ever explain that? Well, I think it depends what you mean by that. You know, we all have an intuition that it's a very powerful sensory experience, so on and so forth. But as a scientist, I need a better definition of qualia before I can work on that. Nobody has provided a good definition.
Yeah. Greg Reichberg.
I wonder if you could say a few words about the relationship of consciousness to attention, attending, because it seems to me a characteristic of human beings is we are, that which we are conscious of at any given moment is not, it's not something that we're simply drawn to. Sometimes we are, but then we can always, there's an element of choice there, what we attend to or not, or whether we sustain our attention on something or not. So it just raises the question, is attention part of consciousness? Is it distinct? Just
Yeah, so it's a very good point. In fact, there is a paragraph on that in the paper. I think consciousness is the last stage of attention. So attention is a filter. In fact, it's a set of filters to discard a lot of information and keep one in the end. The final result is what we are conscious of. But beneath, there is a lot of attentional filters that are unconscious. Is that good enough? So there is a lot of evidence for unconscious attention, but the final result is the conscious state, the conscious information.
Armin Kremers.
Thank you very much. I'd like to talk a lot maybe for...
Yeah. Mike.
I like to talk very much mainly for its affinity towards experiment and measurement. And of course, as you go into the realm of philosophy, things become debatable, as you will see. I was wondering what happens with respect to the other realm, namely below. Are you able to, let's say, come to new explanations at the biological level, at the cell level, where we do find hallmarks of cognition, like learning and attention, just to mention a few. So are there new explanations as to the scientific underpinnings in biology, cell biology?
On the question, but the whole name of the game in our field is to bridge from these different levels. So I work personally in what is called cognitive neuroscience, which is really this description of the architecture of the system. But more and more, of course, we try to dig into the underlying cellular mechanisms, and some labs are quite specialized in that. So I showed you some single cell data where you have to bring an electrode and record from a single cell. More and more, it is possible to record now from hundreds of such cells. In some organisms, like the zebrafish, the larva of the zebrafish, all of the neurons at once. Okay. So yes, this level of analysis of the mechanism is becoming quite possible, and even, in fact, of course, the molecular mechanisms of the single cells. And more, we begin to have bridging laws between these different levels. Yeah.
We have 3 colleagues who would like to speak. I want to take them. Maybe we even skip answers and listen to Marcus Gabriel and come then back. Marcelo?
I prefer to open this in the general discussion.
Okay. Gilles?
So you define consciousness as self-awareness. I think it's not too difficult to build a self-aware machine, but is this meaning of consciousness exactly the same that was in your address when we say that the dignity of the humans come from their consciousness? Is it the same word? Is it the same meaning?
Laurence? Mike?
Okay. I'm working on emotion, trying to modelize emotion in machine. So I'm working on machine learning with deep learning. So I don't know what kind of proof we have to say it's possible, what you say, conscience in the machine, because at the moment, it's, for me, totally impossible. There is no intention in the machine. There is no, pleasure, desire. You say, okay, qualia, it's difficult because it's not so much defined. But it's, for me, a holistic problem. We are just speaking about experiment on the brain, and it's very, very important and very exceptional, your work about that. But how we can decide that there is this level of conscience possible in machine, because we are not taking into account all the information we have in our brain. So it's impossible to think about that without this idea of intention, conatus, as spoke by Spinoza. Thank you.
To keep us on track, I would suggest that you hold back, Stanislas. We listen to Marcus Gabriel, and you re-engage in the next round, keeping the last 2 questions in mind, because I think some of the aspects will also be touched upon. Marcus, you have the floor.